Ms. Alma Frias. Treasurer Moll. Ms. Gallagher. Ms. Gunn for Dr. Imbassiani. Present. Mr. Hunter.
Present.
Ms. Johnson Hall. Mr. Metcalf. Ms. Hoffman for Secretary Podesta. Here. Mr. Prince. Mr. Russell. Ms. Sotelo. Mr. Gunning.
Here.
Ms. Gordon. Ms. Wong Hernandez for Ms. Bosler.
Here.
Ms. Patterson.
Here.
Chairman, unfortunately, we do not have a quorum.
How many more do we need?
We need 3 more members.
Okay, I think one member's on his way, so why don't we then skip item number 2 and wait till we have a quorum and/or come back to that and move on to item number 3, and I will defer my comments to the executive director.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. I do see that we have 2 more members who are now joining us, so we need 1 more member to make a quorum. But I just want, my update is a very brief update, and then I will defer to our new legislative director. But earlier this, last month, first week of December, the NCSHA, the National Council of State Housing Agencies, had a special board meeting to adopt our federal legislative priorities. You may know that in October, I was named as president, which we have now amended our bylaws, which is now chair of the, thank you,
Yay.
of that national association. So it's very excited to be able to make sure that California has a seat at the table, especially when we're talking about housing finance reform and some of the other things at the national level. Representative Maxine Waters is going to be chairing the Housing Financial Services Committee, so that's also very exciting because a lot of the things that we will be dealing with from the financing reform to have a California representative chairing that committee is extremely exciting. We know that the federal government is not without its challenges facing a shutdown and the impacts that they may have on some of our housing programs. And so with that, I will defer to Francesc, and if we could move to item 4, so that Francesc can provide us with a legislative update.
Yep, because we still need 1 more, right?
Yes.
Got it. Has he been formally?
And
Let's do that, yeah.
Francesc may not have been formally introduced, so I have to tell you how excited
Yes.
and with pure joy that we are announcing Francesc. And if Francesc wants to give just a little brief overview of who he is and where he's coming from, but
We're all very
we are
excited
so
he's
happy
on
to
the
have
team.
him.
Yeah, push the button. There you go.
So, Chairman, members of the board, I am really thankful and excited for the opportunity to serve the state of California as the new Director of Legislation for CalHFA. I was recently working as the Assistant Commissioner for Government Affairs at the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. 2019 is shaping up to be a busy year in housing at both the state and federal levels. And I'll talk now about what's happening at the federal level. The shutdown and budget impasse have dominated the news. 95% of HUD staff remains furloughed, and program impacts are expected to be more severe if the duration of the shutdown is prolonged. CalHFA has been following this complex situation closely, and we continue to calibrate our contingency plans. There are 3 main ways that our agency is monitoring shutdown impacts. The first is Section 8. Contracts that are currently in place in our Section 8 portfolio will continue to receive voucher payments until March 1st. However, there are 14 contracts that recently expired in our Section 8 portfolio and 9 that will expire in the next 2 months. HUD has informed that there will be no contract renewals during this shutdown. We are exploring ways to mitigate impacts to these projects, either by obtaining HUD approval to utilize reserve funds or by deploying agency resources in the short term in a responsible way that would not generate risk to the agency. Second, on the single-family side, we continue to monitor the effects of the shutdown on the secondary market. Although we have seen no disruptions to date, and Ginnie Mae continues to securitize FHA-insured loans, we anticipate that there could be delays if more complex cases arise, given that they are operating only with essential staff. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are not affected by the furlough. Third, on our multifamily pipeline, we have not seen any impacts to date, but there might be delays in obtaining HUD approvals in our risk-sharing programs if the shutdown were to continue. We continue to model longer-term impacts and evaluate contingencies for a prolonged shutdown scenario. Beyond the current budget impasse, CalHFA will be advocating for a number of federal priorities in close coordination with national-level coalitions such as the National Council of State Housing Agencies, NCSHA. I'll discuss 3 concrete federal priorities that we expect to focus on in 2019. Ginnie Mae securitization, tax credit reform, and housing finance reform. So Ginnie Mae securitization. The joint initiative between Treasury and HUD to provide a federal financing bank, known as FFB, financing for risk-sharing loans expired a few weeks ago on December 31st, despite a vigorous national advocacy effort for its extension. While very successful, the FFB initiative was always conceived to be a temporary solution until a more permanent program was established. And there appears to be momentum for such a permanent solution in 2019, and that would be to authorize through Congress for Ginnie Mae to securitize risk-sharing loans. CalHFA is and will continue to be in a leadership role nationally in these efforts. Second, tax credit reform. 2018 brought important improvements to the low-income housing tax credit, like income averaging and expansion of 9% allocations. In 2019, there will be a push to enact additional improvements to the tax credit, including establishing a minimum 4% rate, expanding the 9% cap beyond the 12.5 expansion we obtained last year, and an expansion of basis boost provisions. We are also advocating to include a provision in the tax reform bill that will clarify that veterans' preferences are allowable in projects with private activity bonds and 4% credits. Third, housing finance reform. In 2019, we expect to see efforts to end conservatorship of the government-sponsored enterprises, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, and enact reforms to the national housing finance system. Mike Calabria's nomination to lead the Federal Housing Finance Agency can be seen as an indication that GSE reform will move to center stage this year. CalHFA, along with NCSHA, will engage in this discussion and ensure that a revamped housing finance system preserves a central role for state HFAs and makes capital available and affordable to households and communities that need it in a responsible manner. I'd also like to inform the board that HUD Deputy Secretary Pamela Padenod, who we have worked with closely, has resigned from her position. She will be replaced in an acting capacity by Brian Montgomery, who's currently HUD Assistant Secretary for Housing, and also the Federal Housing Administration Commissioner. Mr. Montgomery will be retaining his current roles in addition to acting as HUD Deputy Secretary. Now I will briefly discuss the state legislative outlook. Following 2 exceptional years of legislative accomplishments in the housing arena, we expect the focus on housing to continue in 2019. As you already know, Governor Newsom's agenda places a big emphasis on affordable housing and on jump-starting housing production across the state. The legislature also seems poised to prioritize housing in 2019. The fact that the Senate will have a separate housing committee chaired by Senator Scott Wiener indicates the importance being placed on solving the affordable housing crisis. The legislature has already introduced their first batch of bills, and we have looked at them, and they feature an exceptional amount of housing legislation. They fall broadly into 4 categories: land use, tax credits, redevelopment, and homelessness and tenant protections. I'll just mention a few of the most noteworthy ones. Incoming Senate Housing Chair, Scott Wiener, has introduced SB 50, which is an amended version of last year's SB 27, providing a density bonus in transit areas. This bill makes an important changes over last year's bill in an effort to address last year's opposition. First, it allows communities to propose alternative plans to address housing production. It strengthens anti-displacement provisions, and it expands the density bonus to wealthy non-transit areas. Assembly Housing Chair David Chu has introduced AB 10, which provides $500 million in annual state low-income housing tax credits, and AB 11, which creates a new framework for revived redevelopment. Senator Nancy Skinner has introduced SB 18, which uses a three-pronged approach to tackle homelessness. It provides grants for rental assistance, it provides a fund for legal assistance for eviction prevention, and it seeks to identify and aggregate landlord-tenant resources. There are also a number of bills that codify the right to shelter, establish new tenant protections, and seek to further incentivize accessory dwelling units. So as you can see, 2019 is going to be an exciting year in housing at both the state and federal levels, and I look forward to being a resource to all of you and to working with all of you. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you, Frances. Any questions, comments, insights? Awesome, welcome aboard. Glad
Thank
to
you so
have
much.
here. Okay,
Can we welcome our treasurer?
I think I will.
Yeah.
Let's welcome our treasurer, Fiona Ma. Welcome. Glad to have you here. And then Anna Marie and Ben, nice to see you guys. Happy New Year. Any comments, Madam Treasurer?
Oh, I just am very happy to be here. For those of you who know me, I like to attend meetings, so I am going to try to attend as many of these housing meetings as possible, since this is a major priority for the governor as well as other Californians. I also want to introduce my deputy who will oversee housing and economic development, Jovan Agee. So if I'm not sitting here, then Jovan will be my deputy. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you.
So I think we have a quorum.
We sure
If
do.
you want to have, or,
Has everyone had a chance, going back to item 3, the minutes from our November 13th meeting? Were there any comments or edits to it? Seeing none, deem them approved.
I'll abstain. since I
Abstain,
wasn't here.
that's correct. She wasn't here. Everyone else here? Anyone else not want to vote?
if no objections, we can.
No objections? Okay. Deem the minutes approved. Thank you. Item number 5. Mr. Flood, I think you're up.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Larry Flood. I am the Director of Financing and am serving as the Interim Director for Multifamily Programs. And we have one project for your attention today.
You missed a spot, Steve.
As I said, we have one project to present to you today, and Steve Lyerly, the loan officer for Heritage Plaza, will present the report.
Thank you. Good morning. I think we want to address, there was a slip page for the cover sheet, the first page of the report. Was that received or was that distributed, do we know?
Yes, we got it.
Okay. Do you want to discuss the reason for the change or the FFB opportunity or? Okay. So so the Heritage Project, the explanation for the slip page is that, as Frances said, the FFB program closed on December 21st. There were some available slots that we had lobbied and petitioned for as an agency, and we strove to find some things in our portfolio that we could fit, as these were not originally underwritten for FFB. And the underwriting standards of Heritage Plaza met those standards, and we were able to get it in under the wire. And so the timing of when this went to Senior Loan Committee and then the production of the staff report to get to the board, all this stuff happened in those intervening holiday days and stuff, and so we kind of made the correction for the board to be as accurate information as we could. The again, the underwriting standards applied here would still allow this to go as a bond-funded loan as well as an FFB loan. This project is located in Redding, California. Is brought to us by American Real Estate Ventures, Inc. and Kingdom Development, Inc. The project is an acquisition rehab project and be new to our portfolio. It consists of 180 units, is 100% affordable to households earning less than 60% of the area median income. The project consists of 2 separate phases with 100 units in the first phase and 80 units in the second phase for a total of 180 units. It was built at 2 different times. The first phase in 1968, the remaining phase in 1972. There are some distinct architectural differences between the 2 phases. The first phase is kind of a shed roof, built in clusters around paved courtyards, extended walkways across the front of the buildings, and they kind of face each other in these paved areas. The second phase is a more traditional type garden walk-up style where you have 1 staircase serving 2 units on the second floor. There's 31 2-story residential buildings in total and approximately 5 single-story structures that are used for laundry rooms, the community room, computer room, leasing office, maintenance storage sheds, those type of uses. The project has a mix of bedroom sizes ranging from studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. The square footages range from 415 square feet to 857 square feet. The overall income restrictions from all the various sources of financing provides 56 units restricted to 50% or less of AMI, and 123 units restricted to 60% or less of AMI. This percentage equates to 31% of the units being restricted to 50% or AMI or lower. So the project is extremely family friendly. If we had, is there intent to start our PowerPoint at some time? There is no PowerPoint. No PowerPoint. Okay. So the project is extremely family friendly. On my visit to the site, there were children everywhere. The original plan for this development was there to be 3 phases. So 1 phase was built on one end, another phase was built on the other end. The 3rd phase was never built. So it leaves a big vacant area that's been utilized for a community garden space that's going to be enhanced as part of the improvements to this property. There's also a large play structure, and directly across the street is a regional park that includes aquatic center, a teen center, and 2 softball fields and plenty of play areas. So it's literally just fronting 1 section of this development, and it's just an extremely family-oriented community. The units themselves, having built in late 60s and early 70s, are rather utilitarian in nature, but they have all the features that are required for our developments. It's gas and electric wall heating, evaporative coolers, gas ranges and ovens, dishwashers, garbage disposals, refrigerators, and individual water heaters. Due to the nature of the 2 projects, there's a lot of differences between the 2 phases in terms of amenities that are available. So there's some financial subsidies available to this project, and that includes 59 units of a project-based Section 8 rental, 20-year rental HAP assistance from HUD. It's administered by California Affordable Housing Initiative, Inc., or also known as CAHI. The HAPRI was last renewed in October of 2017 and has a 20-year term until 2037. The borrower is in the process of getting an assignment and also a markup to market of that HAP agreement, but our underwriting was based on the current rate structure and the current HAP agreement, so that we're not dependent on the percentages of increases that they get on the HAP contract. We were limited on the sizing of this loan by loan-to-value constraints, so we're issuing bonds in the amount of $11,960,000. We're proposing to offer a 35 and 17 permanent loan product that's amortized over 35 years, due in 17. We've done the financial calculations to show that that will create a balloon condition year 17, and we've shown that through our financial calculations that the property can easily bear refinancing at that point in time.
Steve, I'm going to interrupt you because I don't want to bore the board members. The most important thing about this particular project is this is a new financing product that you haven't seen recently. You've usually seen 40-year amortized. This is a 35-17 with the balloon payment. The most important thing to bring to the board's attention is the exit strategy and whether or not at the end of the 17 years, this particular project has cash flow that will be able to pay the debt that's on the property and exit through that process. By setting up this financing structure, we were able to make sure that this particular project had significant enough rehabilitation to ensure and preserve the long-term affordability and make sure that it had enough money available to do the rehab that was necessary. So I think those are the big highlights that are important. And so with that, I think we should open it up whether or not they have any questions.
So opened.
I had one, Steve. I noticed you highlighted the management fee here in green. Is there a particular reason for that? Is 4.8 extraordinary, or is that something the board has asked to have highlighted?
I think it was just a carryover. It was probably in my checking.
Okay.
Just, significant numbers that I want to verify and make sure that
Is
meet our
4.8
guidelines.
standard, or is that about the right management fee?
It can range anywhere. It depends on the services provided,
Right.
the region it's in, the nature of the development. I think 4 to 6%. Well, our actual financial analysis in the past has been updated. Just used a 4% flat based on revenues, and but sometimes it's contractual.
What are the industry standards and what are our underwriting guidelines to say the range should be for a management fee?
Well, we do rely on regional information and what's standard in the region, and we approach our asset management team who looks at our portfolios.
Would this be
and helps
consistent
them.
with our
It is
underwriting
consistent
guidelines and
with our
within
underwriting
those
guidelines.
standards?
Yes.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
I have some questions. How long would it take to, this is my first meeting, so I apologize. So how long does it take to do these rehab?
This is scheduled for a construction period loan for 24 months. The actual rehab to conversion is, has been designed for 18 months. Basically, there'll be some relocation that will last for about, at a maximum 4 days per tenant. For about 70 units, they're gonna have kitchen cabinets replaced, and which will move them out of the units at some time. But the tenants will remain in place, they're all income qualified, so there won't be like an extended lease-up period in
Okay,
this case.
so when you
But an
just,
18-month.
18 months.
Rehab period with a conversion in 24 months.
okay, and when you displace them, where do they go?
They're only temporarily displaced.
I know, where do they stay at a local hotel?
They're gonna provide a community area for them and give them housing, food vouchers and,
Is the
sorry,
developer
they have a
here?
plan for, yes,
Let's have
Robert
the-
Lawler's here.
Let's have
and
the
he can speak
developer
Okay,
come up and
thank you.
introduce themselves and tell, and tell the treasurer what your relocation, temporary relocation plan is.
Good, how you doing? Morning.
Morning?
Morning, my name is Bob Lawler. I'm the president and owner of American Real Estate Ventures. Happy to be here. I've known Steve for a long time. I've been in this industry for over 15 years in varying capacities, and I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to be a sponsor of this project. Before I get into the relocation issue, I do want to say that this loan product was critical in giving me the ability to compete to purchase this property. It is a re-syndication. It's obviously an existing property. It was marketed by a real estate broker, a brokerage firm. There were 6 or 7 other bidders on this property, and to have the option to have a relatively high leveraged permanent funding source gave me the ability to compete for this property. The alternative could have been an investor coming in and just looking at the property at the cash flow, looking at it as a yield investment. And that investor, that type of investor, would not put the $30,000 a door into renovation that this project needs. I'm able to put that much money into the property because of the financing program, this financing program, and because of the 4% tax credit program and the equity that raises. So my point being is that this component of the capital structure is really critical to competing in the environment that we continue to have in California. So I'm grateful that I'm having this opportunity. I've been given this opportunity. But with regard to relocation, so the renovation will occur with the tenants in place. And I've done this with multiple other properties, working with somebody else, but it's a pretty standard practice where the tenant has to vacate the unit. And I mean, we're not doing, a dozen units at a time. They're going in groups. So there's only 3 or 4 units that get affected on a day-to-day basis. So the tenants have to vacate the unit all day long during regular business hours. We're going to set up one of the there's a small clubhouse where we'll have Wi-Fi and TV, and it'll be a hospitality unit, so they could hang out there if they want to. We also will have to provide them food vouchers. I don't know that we're going to bring in food, but we'll give them vouchers for local restaurants or somewhere that's convenient for them to get their meals. And at the end of the day, the unit will be in a condition where they can occupy the unit again. The bathroom will be usable every night. The kitchen may not be usable, especially with the units where we're replacing the cabinets. But it'll be a 4 to 5 day process in those units where we are doing the more extensive renovation, replacing the cabinets, the flooring. So it'll be an inconvenience for the tenants for 4 or 5 days, but then at the end of that period, they'll be able to move back into a fresh, clean apartment unit.
So at night, they'll be able to move back in to
Pardon me?
sleep? They'll be able to sleep in their
Yes.
bedrooms at night?
Yeah.
And do they've been notified that this could happen, or they will be notified, I guess,
Yes.
after?
Yeah, we have a series of notifications. The initial, we have a general information notification that'll go out to everybody initially, and then I'll be working with the property management company, FPI Management. They manage thousands of affordable housing units, and they've gone through this renovation in place process on many occasions. We'll have a plan of action with the contractor, which buildings we're gonna do first, and we'll meet with those individual tenants before the construction starts. So we'll have a series of meetings with the tenants just to make sure they understand what's expected of them. They're gonna have to move, they're gonna have to move their dishes out of the cabinets, and we'll provide them boxes, and we'll give them some support in that regard also.
Okay.
So it's an ongoing and continuous process through the whole renovation period.
And I assume you've been in touch with Congressman LaMalfa's office, Assemblymember Dolly, and Senator Ted Gaines. I guess he's transitioning, but just to let them know that this is happening, because they may get constituent phone calls, and that would probably.
Yeah, I know that I believe through the bond and tax credit application process, they get notified. I haven't talked to them personally.
And we notify them as well.
Oh, you do?
As
Okay.
part of the approval
Okay, good.
process, we reach out to our elected officials for that district, and we let them know that the project is happening.
Okay, good.
And also, by the way, the city of Reading is ecstatic that I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. No, thank you.
This
Thank you for
property-
keeping this affordable. 'Cause
Well, and that's the thing. Right now, there's still another 40 years on the current tax credit and bond restrictions. So if another investor came in and didn't do the renovation, you couldn't justify putting additional equity in because the rents are capped.
Mhm.
And so you would never see this type of renovation. And I know the city is aware of that, and I've been working closely with them, and they're excited to see us get in there and submit our permit application and get it done.
And they're providing over $2 million in subordinate financing that's staying with the project. It's about $2,047,000, I think, or
No,
something.
you guys are doing that.
No, we have the subsidy loan.
Yeah.
Do I have the number?
480,000.
480,000 is
Yeah.
what they have? Oh,
Yeah.
It's carrying over,
They're-
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I read the wrong number off my deal.
Yeah.
Deb has a question.
Yeah, they're providing subordinate financing, which will go directly to increasing the scope of renovation.
Deborah?
Yeah, just one more quick question on the day use area for folks who have been temporarily displaced. Is there a private area there for if we have issues like a lactating mother, we have other children issues?
It's the room that we will be using there are two rooms, so, and there's a door that can be,
Thank you.
yes.
Anne Marie, do you have a?
Yeah, Tia, thank you for the clarification on it being a new loan product. I mean, I think it's always great when CalHFA, we go outside of what our traditional lending practices are to try to, keep units affordable and be able to provide these renovations. I'm kind of curious, I don't recall, or maybe my memory's failing me, but I think in the last 3 years that I've been on the board, I don't recall us being, we're all over the state, but I think this is at least my first Shasta County project. And, we're in Southern California, Central Valley, and, I feel pretty savvy in those environments. So I'm kind of curious about the appraisal and the market analysis, mainly because we are going to have a loan product that in 17 years is going to become due, and kind of projecting, what that takeout or what that restructuring is going to look like. So if you can just indulge me for a minute there and kind of share with us that market analysis. I don't know if it's staff or yourself as the developer in that appraisal and what your projections are and what we're thinking, why this loan product is going to be okay on that
Yeah.
takeout.
That's a good question. Reading is pretty far north. It's about a two and a half hour drive north of here. The city it's bigger than you would think, though, because you have Reading and you have Red Bluff. Reading has a population of 90,000 people. And right now, in this property without any renovation, it's, I believe there were only 3 vacant units, which is less than 2%. I believe the appraisal demonstrates that competing properties, market rate or otherwise, have extremely high occupancy levels also. Our financial analysis is, it's based on current operations with some savings based on the renovation, expense savings based on the renovation that we're doing. But the growth rate is very conservative at 2.5%. So we're assuming that our income will grow 2.5% a year, which is conservative. It's the cash flows do demonstrate that at the end of 15 years, so we'll have the 2 years of construction and rehab, and then the 15-year tax credit compliance period. And at that point, that's pretty standard. That's pretty typical to either do a refinance or actually do another re-syndication, sell it and do another tax credit deal. So the cash flows are conservative in that regard. That year 17 NOI would be substantial to do a renovation or for somebody to, or to demonstrate the value a value that's high enough for someone to come in and easily pay off the debt. As far as the market, there's not, construction costs are so high right now. And the general market isn't in this greater MSA it's not that strong. So there's virtually no new market rate product being built up there. So you're going to have this high demand and aging inventory, and so I think the value is going to be there just by virtue of the difficulty that developers have in building new product. And as far as affordable product, I'm sure you guys have all seen that a new construction, a new affordable product takes a pretty massive amount of subsidy, and that's something that's a very scarce resource also.
Well, it sounds definitely like there is a good exit strategy and the projections, even though it's a new loan product, that there's different outs for us as the investor and for you as the developer as well. So that makes me feel much more confident with a new product that we're rolling out to facilitate this in an area that we aren't as traditionally involved as other parts of the state. So that's good to hear.
I feel very confident in it.
Any other questions? I had one final one. The car fire was up there. Are you going to have impact from construction because of all the rebuilding?
I'm not sure whether that will impact my costs. I imagine that it will. My contractor is Precision General Contracting. They've done dozens of acquisition rehab projects throughout California, and they're a very active contractor. So they have crews that will travel. They're based in Northern California, in Sausalito, actually. But they have crews that will travel to wherever the project is located, so that does help contain costs.
Good.
Yeah. But it's a concern.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions from the board? All right. Larry, Steve, final thoughts?
I'd just like to add, just briefly, that part of what makes this new product exciting for CalHFA is the fact that, the longer amortization allows us to make the larger mortgage amounts that we would if we were doing a 40-year loan. But the 17-year term brings the borrowing rate down a good 3/8 to 0.5%, which is, very necessary and making us competitive in trying to do these types of deals. And also for tax credit deals, as was stated before, you know, there's going to be a resyndication in 17 years, which also makes this product attractive. So we're very excited about it.
Go ahead, Ben.
So Larry, just on the use of the product going forward, it looks like on this transaction, we've sort of mitigated some of the risk by a high debt service coverage ratio of pairing it then with some of the gap subsidy funding. So you're still getting to a pretty good amount of aggregated debt financing from CalHFA.
Yeah.
So do you think that's going to be sort of the vision going forward? And where do you think this product's going to work if you don't have that gap subsidy piece attached to it in a second position?
Well, I guess the gap subsidy piece is really helpful in places where the construction costs are really high, but I think.
And the price of property, and this deal wouldn't happen without that gap financing.
Yeah, but I think in general that we are going to be, you know, we're going to look at projects very discreetly and look at the economics, and we're going to stress the rents and the growth factors and get, you know, a good feel for whether or not we think this is a good real estate investment on top of, you know, satisfying whatever our affordable goals are. And so this structure would not work for every project, but for certain projects in areas where we believe that the rental growth and the potential for market appreciation are there. It's a very viable product.
All right, and
I'll move adoption of Resolution 1901.
Second.
it's a motion and a second. Melissa, roll call.
Ms. Davila Frias,
Yes.
Treasurer Ma,
Aye.
Ms. Gallagher, Ms. Gunn, Mr. Hunter,
Aye.
Mr. Metcalf,
Yes.
Ms. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Gunning.
Yes.
Resolution 19-01 is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. All right, moving on to item number 6, discussion, recommendation, and possible action regarding approval of the implementation of CalHFA Mixed Income Program. Jeree, you're up.
As Jeree takes a moment to come up and get set up and get her PowerPoint going, I want to remind the board of SB2 Tony Atkins, which was the dedicated source that was funded by the document recording fee. And you know, a portion of those funds were continuously appropriated to CalHFA to provide a mixed income product to help serve the missing middle. And this is what this program is. This is our missing middle mixed income program that is funded by the SB2 Atkins.
Thank you, Tia.
Morning, Chairman Gunning, members. Is that on? Okay, terrific.
Good. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Gunning and members of the board. Jeree Glasser-Hedrick, Director of Business and Government Affairs. I'm very happy to be with you today, and I'm excited to share with you the mixed income program that we've developed over the last year. Today, we are asking for approval of the program. Upon approval, this will be the only statewide multifamily program that incentivizes mixed income multifamily housing development. I do have a PowerPoint presentation which touches on the high points of the program, and I'd be happy to take questions afterwards. Before I dive in, I wanted to express a sincere appreciation to everybody that helped bring this program to fruition. Although I'm presenting today, this was sincerely a team effort. It involved legal, multifamily, financing, asset management, the executive team, marketing. I think everybody that touches CalHFA was involved in this program. I'm very happy and honored to be part of the team. I learned a significant amount. For those of you who don't know, I'm relatively new to CalHFA, and so this was a really good opportunity for me to understand all the different silos that exist at CalHFA and how they all come together to create a program. So as Tia indicated, I wanted to provide a little background about the funding source that is sourcing this program. 2017 was a really big year for housing. I think there's rumors that 2019 is going to be a big year for housing as well. Big years for housing are good in my book. But as you may recall, a $4 billion bond was approved by both the legislature and signed into law by the governor that made its way to the ballot this November. Additionally, Senate Bill 2 was passed, creating the Building Home and Jobs Act, which became effective in 2018. The funding stream for this ongoing permanent affordable housing funding source was to come from a recordation fee on real estate transactions. It was estimated to raise somewhere between $200 and $300 million. In the first year of the program, the money was split between local governments and HCD, and beginning in 2019, 15% of the proceeds will come to CalHFA for the purpose of establishing an ongoing program for mixed income housing. So over the last year, CalHFA has led a number of listening sessions with the development community, lenders, and investors. And given the loss of the welfare exemption, which is the tax abatement that most tax credit projects benefit from, and the fact that units over 80% lose access to the tax credit program, there wasn't a lot of optimism from the development community about trying to produce projects that were targeted at over 80% while still having to meet the CalHFA lower and low income requirements. So as a result of all of the listening we did over the past year, we've crafted a program that reflects the challenges in the marketplace of developing units that are 81% or higher, while taking advantage of underutilized state and federal resources, mainly the bond and tax credit, 4% tax credit program, and the fact that the federal government last spring allowed something called income averaging, which allows tax credit projects to incorporate a range of incomes in their projects ranging from 20 to 80% AMI, where before historically bond and tax credit projects were required to be 60% or below. This program will be a new construction program. There's been a lot of discussion about the need for new units and our lack of production, so we're focusing on new construction. It'll be structured as subordinate debt. One of the unique features is it will target units 30 to 120% AMI, and units must use bonds and/or bonds and tax credits, which I'll get into a little bit in a later slide. So one of the big changes over time to this program is initially it was contemplated that CalHFA would be required to be the permanent lender. We did, like I said, do quite a bit of outreach with the development community, and given the number of executions that exist through other lending institutions, the idea was, why don't we go ahead and open this program up to allow other lenders to participate as well. So CalHFA will be required to be the conduit issuer. We have gone through the process of qualifying preferred lenders to participate in this program. We solicited an RFQ in November, and I can talk more about that. But in general, construction lenders that are involved in this project will need to be qualified as CalHFA preferred construction lenders. And permanent lenders that participate will need to be qualified as well, but developers will have the option to select a preferred permanent lender or CalHFA. So in general, we're looking for projects that are shovel ready. Developers need to have site control of their sites. With regard to the financing structure, if the project is more than 51% affordable, we will require that the project go through the process of receiving a bond and tax credit allocation. Another option would be to structure a transaction that qualified for the as a mixed income program under the CDLAC regulations, which is a project that is 50% or less affordable. And if that would be the case, the developer would only be required to secure a bond allocation, but could secure tax credits if it worked with their financing structure. With regard to our preferred lender qualification process, as I indicated, we did release a request for qualifications in November. We received significant feedback from the lending community. We've gone through and recommended preferred lenders for approval, and we have we have a list of lenders to provide for you today. The criteria to be a preferred lender on the construction and permanent side was that you had either closed 8 bond and tax credit deals nationally or 5 at the state level. The next slide demonstrates the lenders that we have gone through and qualified. We need to go through the process of executing preferred lender agreements with all these lenders, and we won't do so until approval for the program has been received. JP Morgan Chase, Citibank, Hunt Real Estate Capital, Red Mortgage Capital, Wells Fargo, and US Bank have been qualified as construction and perm lenders. There were no lenders that wanted to be qualified only as construction lenders, and there were 3 lenders, Berkadia Commercial Mortgage, CCRC, or California Community Reinvestment Corporation, and Walker and Dunlap, which only qualified as preferred lenders, preferred permanent lenders. So getting back to the program, there are some limitations to the program. The subordinate debt can't be used in conjunction with the 9% program. The rationale is we're really trying to leverage our underutilized bond and 4% projects and not create larger demand for the oversubscribed 9% program. It can't be used in conjunction with HCD programs, with the exception of the home and the CDBG programs. The idea is we're trying to leverage our state resources, not double and tripling up on state resources. The home and CDBG exception has been provided because HCD really does provide local assistance for those 2 programs, and they're not technically state resources. We are going to allow projects that have inclusionary obligations to participate in the program, but to the extent we provide gap resources to those inclusionary projects, the master developers that are subject to the inclusionary obligations will be responsible to match whatever subsidy sources we provide. Additionally, we are looking for projects that have not received CDLAC and TCAC applications. We're trying to create net new units, units that haven't received approvals to date. We also have some geographic, sponsor, and project type limitations. The amount of funding that's going to be available will be $40 million in the first year, and we don't want potentially one sponsor to secure all of the resources. So we are limiting the amount of resources for sponsors to 33%, so no sponsor would be able to receive more than 1/3 of the resources. No one county could receive more than 1/3 of the resources, and no more than 25% of the resources will be able to be used for age-restricted units. Additionally, projects will not be eligible for additional CalHFA subsidy through our typical subsidy program. There will be there are 2 preferences that have been built into the program. One gives priority for projects that restrict a 10% tranche of their units between 81 to 120%. Although these are the units that the development community claimed were very difficult to finance and make feasible given the market conditions, these are units that address the missing middle component of our housing continuum, which we do very little to address currently. So we are providing a preference for projects that include a 10% tranche. We're also, to the extent projects meet that criteria, we'll also be looking at who has the lowest subsidy request per unit if we're put into a situation where we receive more applications than we have resources for. A little bit about the affordability restrictions. They're fairly traditional and are consistent with most bond and tax credit deals, 20% at 50 or 40% at 60. We are going to allow income averaging, and in the next slide I'll explain we're actually going to force people to income average. And just to step back, income averaging allows a project to meet an average affordability of 60% AMI. It used to be that projects had to be 60% AMI or below, but now you have the ability to include ranges of affordability in your projects going up to 80% AMI. So this is a development that we're really excited about. It facilitates a broader mix of incomes while also additionally leveraging tax credits, which is vitally important given the construction costs and the land costs that are associated with many affordable housing projects. So in this program, we are going to require that 20% of your tax credited units be targeted at 80%. That will obviously require that some of your units be targeted under 60% so you can attain the average 60% AMI. With regard to our subordinate loan program, there is a maximum
Before you go on, the average 60% AMI, I want to make sure that we hit this point so that the treasurer is aware of this. Currently, the regulations, the TCAC regulations, don't go up to the 60% AMI. It's at 59% AMI. And potentially by working with the treasurer's office to look at that, we may be able to get more leverage and more broader range of income. So I just wanted to highlight that one piece there, that might be a potential area for further partnership.
Great, thanks. With regard to the subordinate debt product, the maximum loan size is $5 million. We have built in some provisions for exceptions up to $6 million. The maximum loan size will be $40,000 a unit, and every unit in the project that has a restriction from 30% AMI to 120% AMI will be able to receive that subsidy. And the subordinate loan size can be no more than 50% of the permanent loan size. What we're trying to incentivize is people to maximize their first mortgage debt so that we can stretch these limited subordinate resources as far as we can. With regard to rate, terms, and fees, the product will be introduced into the project at permanent loan conversion, so it will not be used as construction financing. We'll charge 3% simple interest. It will be a residual receipts repayment. Given that the deal structures might be a little different than we have seen historically and could potentially incorporate a significant amount of market rate units, we are opening the door for a potential deferment of our loan for 15 years, but there will be a residual receipt split of the residual cash flow, which will be 50% to the owner and 50% to the residual receipts lenders. Additionally, there is a 35 basis point ongoing fee that's been built into the program. It doesn't apply when CalHFA is the permanent lender. It would apply to transactions that and developers that chose to select a preferred permanent lender from the list that I showed you earlier on. The rationale for the fee is given that we won't be providing first lien lending to ensure that we're able to cover our operational costs. And that really wraps up the components of the program. I wanted to walk you through the timeline for execution and then wrap up. We plan to release the official term sheet and guidelines Monday after hopefully approval of the program today. We will then reach out to the lenders that we've qualified and work to execute preferred lender agreements. We plan to start accepting applications February 4th. with the application deadline the end of April. So this is a fairly tight and aggressive timeline to solicit applications. We are planning to get initial commitments out in summer with SIDLAC applications due in October for a December allocation with a mid-2020 construction loan close. So in summary, we're really excited about this program. If approved today, it will be the only program that incentivizes mixed income multifamily housing at the state level while making use of underutilized private activity volume cap and incentivizing partnerships with localities. We're asking for approval today, which include approval of our preferred lenders, approval of the mixed income program procedures and guidelines, and the term sheet. We're asking for authorization to execute all documents necessary to implement the program, and approval for the executive director to execute subordinate loan documents and make changes to the program procedures and guidelines and term sheets that are commercially and reasonably necessary. On that note, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. One additional comment is that you will not, given the resolution before you, you will not see projects again that only have subordinate financing. You're delegating authority to the ED to execute all of those documents. We will report quarterly to you on the progress of the program. You will see transactions that have first lien lending for approval, because we're not asking for delegated authority for first lien lending with regard to this program. On that note, that concludes my presentation, and I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Awesome, thank you, Jeree. Madam Treasurer?
I have one question. When it says CalHFA Mixed Income Program Limitations, at time of application, project must not have received 4% tax credits or bonds from SIDLAC. And if these are new construction with new lenders, how are they able to get prior, do you know what I'm saying, like a prior project? I don't understand that.
So at the time they applied to CalHFA, they shouldn't have already received an allocation of bonds and tax credits from the treasurer. So
Or this same new construction project under this bond act?
Yes, yes. So what we're trying to minimize or avoid is projects that have submitted to SIDLAC and TCAC and potentially weren't ready or have experienced potentially significant cost overruns, and then coming back and using this program and its resources to fill their gap.
So this is completely new.
Yes, yes. We
Can't come back.
Yeah, we are focusing on trying to create new housing stock in the state, given the 1.5 million shortage that exists right now.
So basically, if you're in the pipeline now, you can't use this program.
But you were rejected. Even if you were rejected, you can't use it. Right?
If SIDLAC or TCAC hasn't provided the project and allocation, then you're welcome to use the program. But if you've received a SIDLAC allocation and you have a time frame to close, we're trying to trying to incentivize the construction of units that had not been contemplated yet or had not received approval yet from SIDLAC.
I got it, because time of application just kind of,
Yeah.
even if you apply and you get rejected, they can still apply under this. It's just if they receive the allocation, they cannot apply.
Yes.
Or reapply or try to add money from this project, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Teresa?
So in here, you say that part of the qualifications is a project must be shovel-ready, and then you commented have site control. Are you just looking at having site control, or realistically being much farther down the line and being ready to break ground?
So in order to submit, we're walking a fine balancing act. We are going to require at the time of application that they have site control. We are not going to require that they be entitled, But in order to apply to SIDLAC in October, a threshold criteria is that they have their entitlements in place. So it's a tall order, 7 or 8 months before they're going to submit to SIDLAC to require to use the program that they be entitled. Which is one of the components of affordable housing that makes development really challenging for developers. They have to have things in place so long before they're able to execute. So like I said, we're trying to find a good balance between bring projects forward and then being ready, but allowing and providing a time frame by which they would have their entitlements in place.
Okay.
Do you have a
So
question?
I'm sorry, can I?
Go ahead, follow up.
So you're anticipating every project will have tax credits with it?
So all projects that are 51% or more affordable will be required to leverage tax credits. There's a second option for this program, and it's a new concept to the subsidy world, but SIDLAC does have a portion of its allocation that's available to mixed income projects, which historically have been really market rate with a component of affordable. For those projects, we're not requiring that developers leverage tax credits, and the rationale behind that is not all market rate developers are necessarily interested in admitting a tax credit owner to their partnership structure. To the extent that tax credits benefit the development, the developer will obviously choose to leverage the tax credits, but we didn't want to limit the potential in this arena and require projects receive a tax credit allocation.
Thank you.
It's to pick up the traditional 80-20 deals that were bond financed, but only had a smaller segment of, yes, so that they have that option.
Hey, Jeree, nice work. I think in this presentation, I can just see a really thoughtful execution trying to achieve, I think, the goals that are in there. I also want to say I got a lot of feedback from folks who participated in the workshops that you guys hosted. And we're really appreciative of the evolution of your thinking over time. I only had, so this has my wholehearted approval. I do have one little nit here I want to talk about though for a second, which I don't know, I think we can work on over time or maybe just clarify. And that has to do with the prohibition on the use of HCD funding. That is something that I support as a matter of concept. I think we do want to try and leverage those funds further. However, what I'd like to work with you on is clarifying that only applies to units that are funded with HCD support or to projects where a majority of units are funded with HCD funding. I'd still like to leave an opening, for example, projects that want to pull down a relatively small amount of, for example, No Place Like Home funding to target 15% of their units for permanent supportive housing, but HCD is not supporting the balance of those units. I'd love to see those be able to come in through this program as well. So if we can maybe dive in a little bit deeper and think if that can be clarified. I don't think there's anything in here. You say a prohibition on the program, but maybe we can define that a little bit more liberally in application.
I think that's something that we can consider. We obviously are aware that there's significant No Place Like Home proceeds, and incorporating a component of that into projects is an interesting concept.
And even better, right? It'd be actually wonderful to see projects that are serving all the way up to 80%, also serving a small number of folks coming out of chronic homelessness. That'd be great. So if we can work on that, I'd be grateful.
Thank you for your comments.
So I'm very intrigued by this product, and I think it's part of the strength of the legislation of targeting moderate income in addition to low and very low income. And probably my question is generated as much by the fact that I've spent my career focusing on extremely low income. So I'm just puzzled by the 40,000 per unit. The last new, very first draft pro forma I looked at for a project that we're providing some advice to was $900,000 a unit for relatively small units. And I'm thinking, now with 40,000 a unit, I mean, is that, just from a developer's perspective, is that enough of an incentive that it's going to make a difference in these mixed income projects? I just would, be interested in what you're hearing from the developers.
So one of the things that you need to remember about this program is a lot of extremely low income projects, because of their rent restrictions, are limited in maximizing their debt. The way this is structured, it's structured to maximize income. So the debt component of these projects will be much different than an extremely low income program. I will say that the sentiment from the development community, given where construction costs are right now, are that it's really hard to pencil deals. And there were a lot of comments that the development community would enjoy more, or would request more than $40,000 a unit. Given where we are right now in CalHFA's other lending programs, we're going to watch this and we're going to see what sort of feedback we do receive. You are delegating authority to the executive director to make changes to the program that are commercially reasonable. And if we aren't able to secure developers for these resources, we're going to need to rethink, come back together, and potentially make some changes.
And
So,
Board Member Hunter, just so you know, when we sized it at that 40,000, we looked historically at trends of what our earned surplus was coming in at per unit. We also looked at the study that we did on tax credit deals between 2011 and 2015, in which we saw local, how much subsidy was coming in, and we split that between federal, state, and local. And this is around the size that we saw based on those historical trends. And so we'd like to start off here and see where it goes. But I don't want to start too high, because what we really do is want to incentivize people using less.
So
I think we also acknowledge, and the prohibition with HCD programs makes our situation a little bit more tricky, but that localities are going to have to participate in these programs. They're going to need to want to have this housing stock in their jurisdictions, and they're going to need to come to the table with resources. And I think that this will be the first time that localities are kind of faced with this sort of decision about how to use their resources, and whether or not mixed income transactions is something that they want to support.
So one of the things that will be interesting to see from a board kind of policy perspective as we begin processing deals is to track, is there any pattern to the geographic dispersion, in terms of costs of development? Are there communities for which this is more attractive versus other communities? Just to keep an eye on that, I'll be interested to see how that works.
We've already started to identify kind of our reporting criteria, and given the precepts of this program, I think that's very important. And data will inform future term sheets and how we proceed. This is a starting point.
Yeah, where it ends up being in play is this, this interesting conversation that we're increasingly having about recognizing that sometimes we achieve housing affordability by moving the housing so far away from the jobs that the transportation cost overcomes the savings on the housing. So it's just that figuring out how this all fits in that matrix is going to be important.
Yeah, just one quick question on the limitation that no one county can receive more than a third of the subsidy per year. I was just wondering, kind of walk me through that. I understand wanting to kind of spread this around, but I'm thinking in terms of LA County, where we have such a...
So LA County, the percentage of population that resides in LA County as a total percentage of the statewide population is about a third, and really that's where that number came from. We want LA to be entitled to their fair share. This number is very consistent with the geographical apportionment that the 9% TCAC program has. So we've mirrored that off of the 9% program. But we want to ensure that they get their fair share. I think we want to be cognitive that we don't want LA to receive all of the funds. We want some other counties to benefit from the program as well. And there is the potential with LA, given their need for housing, that they might come in and have applications that exceed, the $40 million that we have. So that was the rationale.
Thank you.
Teresa.
So I don't actually have a question. I wanted to commend you guys for doing this. I know Tia and I have had conversations about this very type of a program for years now. My concern ever since I got thrown into this world has been about this missing middle and helping them to hold on and building housing so that they aren't falling into our homeless population. I think this is fantastic, and I'm glad we have it. And with that, I would, if there aren't other comments, move approval of Resolution 1902.
The motion, is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. I had one final question. I want to echo Teresa's comments too. Just wonderful. And the staff work, I think, from conception with SB2 to now is really awesome. Can you share, and it's just to piggyback on Deborah's comments, a sense of the amount of money per year? And I know you said 40 million the first year, but then the number of transactions, any way to estimate at 5 to 6 million a deal? Any?
My guess is the way that this program is structured and the fact that, we have limitations on the amount of subordinate debt with regard to the permanent debt, that this is going to attract larger developments that have economies of scale. And my guess is that most people are going to need the $40,000. I mean, to the extent they don't, that's terrific. But so we're projecting, 800 to 1,000 units in potentially, 7 to 12 deals. That's a general range. We'll see if what actually
per year.
Yeah.
800,000 units, Brett.
No, not
8,000.
800.
Okay. I was going to say,
that would be awesome.
What a program! Hey, we're going to make 3.5.
Make Tia queen, right?
No. She isn't already.
No, I mean, I think the thing that we all need to acknowledge is, changing the trajectory of what's happened with housing is a laborious process. It happens deal by deal. Yep. There is no golden goose or silver, lining. It's just getting into the trenches, creating the programs, enlisting the help of the development community, which we can't do any of this without them, and building it unit by unit. And it's hard to dig out of where we are, but we have to start somewhere, and this is a start.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerry. Yeah. Before we go to the vote, any comment from the public? Anyone want to say anything? We're very excited about this program. Great. With that, Melissa?
Ms. Avila Frias?
Yes.
Treasurer Ma?
Aye.
Ms. Gunn? Ms. Gunn?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes.
Mr. Metcalf?
Yes.
Ms. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Gunning?
Yes.
Resolution 19-02 is approved.
And I want to announce that the budget has just posted, and Ben just sent me a little text, and it appears that the governor is proposing $500 million to support additional funding for this particular program that you all just approved.
Good job, board. How about that?
For this, just this
So the
program.
40 goes to 540?
Well, we still have to go
deals
through the
up?
May revise and the budget process,
not done.
but
You're
that
right.
says
You're
a lot
gonna be my
for,
comment.
where this governor is on housing.
That's good, good job. Just again, another kudos to Jeree. Thank you so much. Great work, team. Yeah. Okay, with that, I think we're gonna go into closed session here. So I'd invite everyone to exit the room, with the exception of Tia. Not you, you stay. Is there any other board items, board matters to be discussed? Yep. All right, seeing none, is there any comments from the public? Anybody want to say anything? Okay, want to draw everyone's attention to the handouts that usually come, and I guess I don't need a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, you need to adjourn, and then you need to probably tell them about the next board meeting and workshop, and then maybe adjourn.
Why don't you go ahead then?
So the next board meeting is scheduled for March 7th. It'll be here. And that will be our meeting that we do kind of our annual workshop where we do the big policy, and then you'll be getting the update on our mid-year operation budget and an overview of the 1920 kind of business plan or where we are. So that's kind of where we have that workshop conversation. And that's scheduled for March 7th.
10 a.m. too?
Yes.
Miss-
10 a.m.? I'm sorry, Melissa.
It will probably start at 9 a.m. We
Okay.
haven't
So we got a
finalized
lot
that
to
yet,
do.
but I will definitely let you know. And I also wanted to let the new members know that we'll have a speaker and a reminder for the other members.
Oh,
We have a
yes.
speaker,
Color of Law.
Richard Rothstein, who wrote
Oh.
Color of Law. So for the new members, we did distribute books previously. I'll make sure that you get the book so you have an opportunity to read it.
Please,
Such a
read that
depressing
book.
book.
Isn't it though? I
supposed
read
to
a
be
chapter and
enlightening.
put it down because I get mad,
Right, right.
right?
Yeah.
So, no,
You wanna
but
throw it across the room, right?
And for those that don't want to read, it is on Audible, so you can get it and listen to it.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be really good to have the author of the book here so that we can have a dialogue and discuss, like, what does he think going forward? What are some paths to redressing some of those wrongs
can we make sure the treasurer gets a copy today?
of that book?
I know you got extras over there.
We will.
Give me two.
Okay.
It's a wonderful story and, it's a good book. Okay, with that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.